Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to my podcast, Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am thrilled to be jumping on the microphone with you all for episode number 170. I can't believe we're 30 episodes away from hitting 200. That seems crazy to me. I am so excited to be jumping on here because I had a really powerful and also just insightful perspective when sharing an experience I had with my sister-in-law today. But before I do, and before I jump in, I hope you're all doing well. I hope your October is going amazing. I cannot believe that when you guys are listening to this, it will be the 19th of October. Time do be moseying. It's been going very, very quickly. And I'm just gonna close my window here. I can hear a dog outside and it's very distracting. But I just hope you guys are all doing well and taking time to just nurture and honor yourself and take some time to prioritize your mental health, prioritize, the things you love and the things you're grateful for, and to never take a day for granted, I think is really just the message that I felt on my heart to share with you all. If you missed my last episode, number 169, I chatted with you all about what is your response when you are outside your comfort zone. That episode and this episode, and honestly, many of my episodes, I land on the topics based on my experiences. And people ask me all the time, like, Jessie, how are you still thinking of topics? Like, I could never do that. And I think that my truth in that is we all have experiences and we all have stories. It's whether we choose to share those with those around us. From having my podcast, it's allowed me to look at experiences of what is the lesson I can learn from this? What can I share from this experience with other people? And I think in a lot of ways it's caused me to shift my relationship with hard things in my life, because instead of viewing them all as, life is out to get me, the world's out to get me, it's what can I learn from this and what's a valuable lesson? So I just wanted to throw that in there because today my mind's just been going really fast and just processing a lot of stuff, and I just have so much that I want to share with you guys. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to record multiple episodes today, because whenever I get into this type of headspace, I always like to lean into it, and I'm feeling very creative and very just driven today to provide value. And if you're watching video and I keep touching my hair, it's because this little friend here on the side keeps popping out, and my brain just like scurries when it sees stuff like that and it can't concentrate. I remember like back in grade school when the teacher would be erasing the whiteboard or chalkboard, and they would leave like a little piece behind or a little line. I would have to raise my hand and ask them to erase it because my mind would just hyper focus on that one thing. So if you deal with that too, just know that you're not alone. For today's episode, it is a little bit of a serious topic, but at the same time, I want it to just be kind of fun and playful. And I'm going to share a story with you all. And the point of me sharing this story is not to, I'm going to keep it confidential. But it is not for anybody to feel bad for me or to, really view it in any other way than I wanted to share this to be able to provide perspective on an experience I had in the hopes that it helps even one person. And so what I wanted to talk about today is a concept that not all therapy is bad. What I mean by that is not all therapists and counselors, this isn't just therapists, but counselors, mental health professionals, are going to leave you feeling worse than before you went in. And I have to be very careful about how I talk about this and the language and the verbiage that I use, because I want to be very careful and I want to be very mindful. But the thing about therapy, even in saying that, some of you are probably like, I do not want to listen to this episode right off the get-go. And that's because we all have a different relationship with the word and just with the overall topic of therapy, right? We all have a different view, relationship, comfort level, depending on your past experiences, depending on maybe, if some of your friends or family have gone to therapy and what they've shared with you. We just all have a different relationship with it. And I wanted to share a story with you all because I think that it really nicely ties into what my goal of this episode is, which I'll get into in a minute. So I decided to start therapy again roughly, I want to say 3 months ago. Roughly 3 months ago, I was like, you know what? I'm wanting to go back. I didn't really have anything specific. I knew of things that I wanted to work on deeper again. But more than anything, I just wanted to be kind of proactive in my mental health. As someone whose mental health is very much like a roller coaster sometimes, I knew it definitely wouldn't pose any harm to going and having a safe space to share in. And so as much as like it was easy-ish for me to make the appointment and to show up, which I know is not the case for everybody, I went into it with an open mind of just, I don't know who this counselor is. She's not actually a doctor. She's a counselor. I didn't know anything about her. All I knew is when I called to book my appointment, I said I wanted to focus on EMDR. So EMDR, very high level, is basically a modality of therapy to help you rewire and process past traumas. Very, very high level. I don't know enough about it to really share in depth. I just knew that I was ready to do more of the in-depth work versus just talk therapy. And the receptionist on the phone said, we have one counselor here who can do that. Let me hook you up with her. Fantastic. Amazing. I go to my first session, and like all first sessions or first time really doing anything, it's kind of going to be a bit uncomfortable. You know, you're getting to know each other. This is still a stranger. You're building that relationship. It's like slightly awkward. And it was okay. Not really any red flags after the first session. The second session, I got in a little bit deeper with some of, my past traumas and things I was dealing with. They're asking you a million questions, which again is normal. I know, quite a bit of the process, and I've been on the other side of it. So just answering the questions and going through the motions. I left the second session still feeling kind of undervalidated. My therapist, or I keep saying my therapist, my counselor, whatever I say, just the same person I'm talking about, wasn't really the warmest of personalities. And as someone who's very empathic, I just felt that very quickly. But I'm like, you know what? It's okay. We're going to keep going. We're going to do one more session, and then we'll see. She's the only one here that specializes in EMDR. Not even specializes. I think she had just finished her training, so she was beginning. She's the only one who had the certification to do it. So it's like, we're going to just come back again. The third session is where shit hit the fan. I should have listened to my intuition after the second session, but I decided to give it the benefit of the doubt and go back one more time. During the third session, we were doing something called creating your safe space, your happy place. Basically, the point of this is so that when you are deep into the EMDR processing, if it gets too overwhelming, you have a safe place that you can go back to and a place for your consciousness to visit. Upon us doing that, part of the process is my eyes are closed, I'm tapping on my legs, and it's kind of visualization work within my mind. We were probably 40 minutes into our session, and upon my eyes being closed and doing the tapping, she's guiding me through. And even throughout the whole process, I just felt like she wanted to be anywhere else. I didn't feel like I really had her love or her support or her validation, really. And at one point, I heard just like this crumpling sound. And just like my example with the line on the chalkboard, it's like my brain is like a squirrel. When I notice things like that, my attention instantly switches. So I'm no longer thinking about what I'm supposed to be thinking about. I'm focusing on the crinkling sound that's happening under the desk that I'm sitting beside. And I think nothing of it, and I kind of keep going, and my brain's just like, open your eyes. And I had like this itch, like you need to open your eyes. And I look over, and it's like kind of funny now to say, but it's really not. She had taken a part of her lunch out of her bag during this moment. And I was just in such disbelief that had happened and that's what she was doing. I thought maybe she was reaching, because she was reading the whole script from a piece of paper, which again, she was new to it. She was still learning. I'm totally okay with being a beginner and you trying your best and doing what you have to do. And I was like, okay, maybe she's just getting a piece of paper, getting something else. She was grabbing a part of her lunch. And I just remember I was in shock almost of like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding me. I told her stuff about my past that I didn't tell my psychiatrist of 3 years, because at the point of seeing my old psychiatrist, I wasn't ready to say these things out loud. And I knew that when I stepped into therapy this time, I'm like, I want it to be different. I want to just lay everything on the table so I can work on it. I can't work on it if I'm not truthful. And I was in a place where I was ready to. And in that moment, I couldn't even really name an emotion. I wasn't angry. I was just like, wow, your priorities are everywhere else outside of me. And in that moment, because I have a past as a counselor and I'm a registered social worker and I have a lot of experience in the mental health realm and coaching one-on-one, all I could think of was how my clients would have responded in this moment. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, it's moments like this why so many people have a bad relationship with therapy. Not that all therapists are taking a snack out during their sessions, but it's those little things that make you feel undervalued, undervalidated, like they don't care, that you're like, well, why should I be here then if you don't even care? And I have heard countless stories from clients, from friends, from family of just horrendous experiences that they've had in therapy. And I don't say that to scare you. I say that in a way to validate. Because my goal of this episode is to encourage anyone who is maybe scared to go to therapy for the first time, or who has been and who has had a negative experience, that not all therapists are bad. And I don't mean that them as individuals are bad. I mean the experience. Not all experiences are going to be bad. And kind of a very silly analogy that I thought of as I was sitting here kind of reflecting is, if you go to a restaurant and you order a food that you really like, and maybe it doesn't taste great at that particular restaurant, it doesn't mean that you now don't like that food. It just means that you're not going to go back to that restaurant and get it. It's kind of the same thing with this. We're on a food analogy today based off of her little snack. But I really just want to drive home that not all experiences will make you feel like that. And here's the second part that I want to validate, is that if you have enough courage to go to therapy in the first place, just know that that's also huge. Oftentimes people don't go to therapy, and I think I want to do another episode on just reasons people don't go to therapy and maybe reasons people stop therapy. Because I think that I've witnessed a lot of scenarios and I've heard so many stories that it makes sense why it has such a bad reputation. Which is just very frustrating as a mental health professional, because I'm like, that's the one place that you should be able to go to get the validation that you need. Especially coming at it from the stance of, I'm paying to be here. Which I know is just another added component, but it's like, I'm investing my time and my money into this. Please do your job accurately. And if you're not in the right headspace or have capacity to be a counselor or a therapist, you have a duty to step back. I've told my story before, but when I stepped away from being a counselor, because I was recognizing how I was showing up was not beneficial for my clients. That is on you as a worker. And again, I guess I'm kind of switching here, but just a point I want to make, in any job that we have, if we are not competent to do the job that we're doing, it is our responsibility. The number one philosophy we have is pose no harm. As much as I'm in a good headspace and I have people around me that love and support me and care about me, and I was able to express this with and kind of debrief with, if I didn't have any of that and I didn't have a safe place outside of therapy, that could have been a very detrimental situation. But the point that I want to drive home is, as much as a part of me was like, I'm not going to try to find another therapist, I'm like, that's not helping anybody. Because just because that experience was bad doesn't mean that with the next worker won't be phenomenal. But what happens is when we stop, we don't show our brain or just ourselves in general, our hearts, that good, supportive workers that are going to be helpful for you do exist. And hey, maybe her modality of therapy and her approach would be really helpful for someone. It didn't work for me. And that's something that they reiterated very clearly on the first session was, if this is not a good fit, let us know and we will switch you to somebody else. I think in that moment, I was just, again, so in shock that had happened that I didn't have words. And when I called back to cancel my sessions, I was like, this is what happened. And honestly, this isn't okay. And I think that that's a huge piece that I want to leave you guys with as my final points, is to keep advocating for yourself. If you've been to therapy and you had a bad experience, keep advocating for yourself. If you're not getting what you know you deserve and what you need, don't stay. But here's that trauma-informed piece of my brain, because often for a lot of us, if we've undergone a lot of trauma, our self-advocacy isn't really our strong suit, right? We have a hard time even speaking up for ourselves to go to therapy, yet alone to then say that it's not working. Most of us will just submit and deal with it, even if it makes us feel like crap. The amount of clients that I had tell me that, and I'm just like, I'm so sorry that you did not have enough belief and love for yourself in that moment to be able to stick up for yourself. But that's so common, and we see it all the time. And so I want you to know that if you are not your biggest advocate, unfortunately, nobody else likely will be for you. And I think that that's huge. And if I didn't validate for myself in that moment, you deserve more than this. This is unacceptable. The way that you're feeling right now is the complete opposite of how you should feel in therapy. I likely would have stayed, and I would have kept reiterating very negative thoughts to myself and negative experiences, which likely would have hindered my progress even more so. The next thing that I kind of wrote down is, if you're going into therapy, as much as this can be hard to do, one thing that I would recommend you do is to set very clear intentions on why you're going. Set some goals for yourself and bring those in to you with your session. Because that way you're able to lay out why you're there. And if those things are not being worked on or not met, it's likely not a good fit. Now, your therapist might override that and say, I think we should work on these things first. And I think that oftentimes, the counselor probably is more educated in certain things and is able to guide you effectively. But I think that figuring out your goals and finding someone who specializes in that specifically is going to be huge. Because I didn't want to just see any counselor or any therapist. I wanted to see someone who specialized in EMDR. I knew what I wanted right off the get-go, and so that's what I advocated for myself for. And if you struggle to do this, I encourage you to reach out to a friend or family that can support you in going through this, because I know that making that first initial call is terrifying. The amount of times I write my to-dos on my whiteboard every day that I can, that I'm in here, and I had find a therapist as a goal for months. And I'm someone who considers myself to be pretty courageous and have a pretty good relationship with going to therapy, but it's scary. And I'm not going to sit here and undermine and undervalue that it's not, because it is. And I want you to have that permission to know that yes, it can be scary and overwhelming, but it's not the therapy that's overwhelming. The reason that it's overwhelming is because what that then means. It means you're going to bring up painful experiences. You're going to bring up hard conversations. But remember that therapist is there to help you. The same as a doctor. They're there to help you and to support you, to make it easier, to help you get through it. Right? So figuring out what you kind of want to work on. Know that if it doesn't feel right, it's not. Like I said earlier, I should have listened to my intuition after the second session. And I should have changed who I was going to. My partner actually told me, I don't think you should go back based on what you're telling me, because I called him after my second session and I'm like, I feel worse than before I went in. And I do just want to say, yes, going and working on stuff often gets messy before it gets clean, because you're bringing it all up to the surface and then you have to organize it properly. But something in me was just like, I don't feel good about this. And I didn't listen. And then it got worse. But again, we also can't be too hard on ourselves, because I went back for a reason. I told myself I'd do one more session, and then I did. But then I kept my promise to myself that if I felt the same way, I was going to step away. So I want you to know that I'm also someone who I felt bad for wanting to switch, because I'm like, what if I'm here to see another counselor and she sees me in the hallway and it internalizes that? There's such a deep part of me that just fears hurting anybody's feelings, letting anybody down, making anybody feel any type of way, that I take that at the expense of my own happiness. And I know that I'm not alone in that. But I want you to know that you deserve to do what's best for you. You deserve to do what's aligned for you. You deserve to do what makes you happy, you fulfilled, you loved, you validated, right? Even if that means maybe making somebody else feel uncomfortable. That could also be a very learning opportunity for that person to assess, like, what did I do wrong? What could I do differently? What could I shift? And also knowing that we have different modalities and techniques and personalities. And the same as we don't just jive with every person in our day-to-day life, we're not going to just jive with every therapist. And that's okay. That's why there's so many, and there's so many different options, and there's so many techniques. But if we keep staying with a person, with a modality that makes us feel crummy, first of all, we're not going to make any progress anyways, but we're not allowing ourselves opportunity to experience something different. Those are really the main points that I wanted to share with you guys. I want you to know that if you've had a bad experience, as much as it's not my responsibility, I do just want you to know that I'm sorry you went through that. And if anything, I want you to know that you're not alone in going through that. There unfortunately is a lot of people that have a license that show up as therapists and counselors that shouldn't, but that branches out into every other field as well. There's going to be doctors that should not be doctors and have a license. There's going to be optometrists that shouldn't have license, massage therapists, dentists, you name it. But it is up to us to make that decision for ourselves to switch and to find somebody that is going to help us. Because good therapists and good counselors and good dentists and good nurses and good optometrists and good massage therapists, they do exist. But we will not find them if we just avoid and never go back, or if we just stay and feel like that's all we're deserving of. Coming back to just that gut piece real quick, your intuition will know. If you leave feeling like, I don't really feel like we click. I don't really feel like I can be comfortable. I feel tense. I feel off. I feel weird. I don't really feel comfortable is the biggest word. If you don't feel comfortable in your space with your counselor, it's probably not the best place for healing. And so I would encourage you to find a place where you feel like you can just relax and be yourself and know that you are investing your time and maybe money, depending on the clinic, and being there. And you do deserve to have the best, whatever that looks and feels like to you. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. I hope that you found it valuable. I hope you know how worthy you are of getting proper help, but also just how amazing therapy can be. My therapist that I had for 3 years saved my life. He taught me things that, there's a little bug here, taught me things that I still use to this day. Got me out of some really, really hard times. And the fact that I can now hold both dualities of experiences, I hope that you know that they do exist. And if you've had nothing but amazing relationships and experiences with therapists, I am so happy for you, and I'm so proud of you for going and for showing up, because doing the work is the harder choice. Not many people choose to go because that means facing past pain and demons and mirrors and traumas and all the things. But you will likely thank yourself more down the road, because it's able to be processed and stored and healed properly to allow you to have a better quality of life. So proud of each and every one of you. Thank you so much. I'm sending you each so much extra love. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to chatting with you all on Tuesday. Bye, you guys.